Not my idea, so I could
What's
say.
that? Oh, we're rolling? Okay.
I could.
This is good content.
No.
Rolling.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Forgotten Jesus podcast. My name's Andrew. We have Pastor Robbie Gowdy and Candy with us. Okay, so we have been traveling through the ministry of John the Baptist for far longer than we meant to, and now we are passing.
We don't want to miss anything.
No, we don't.
Andrew.
It's like a crock pot meal. The slower,
We
the
thought
better.
we'd get through this in 2 years when we started this podcast.
Yeah, 2 years ago.
Yes, almost 2 years ago. But we are probably going to be 10 years. It's going to be a
that's
10-year
fine.
long journey.
I'm totally.
I hope
okay
people
with
are hanging in it, because here's what we're doing. The Bible is like a diamond, the rabbis say, and every time you turn it, a fine cut diamond, you see the same diamond from a different perspective, different prism, different light. So that's what we're doing with the Bible. We're just kind of turning and looking and meditating. So
I like it. Okay, so we finally got to where John is passing the baton to Jesus.
yes,
But then John goes to jail.
yeah,
And it gave me PTSD from the time I went to jail. But that's an episode
went to
for another
jail?
time.
John Bolton.
Vivian, do you remember this?
John
Did
Bolton.
you ever know
do?
about this? We'll talk about it later.
You did
Okay.
get arrested on camera one time at Long Island, but you're
I
not talking
did get
about
arrested
that.
on camera.
At
I
Kroger
also got
one time.
arrested on my 16th birthday.
Oh my gosh!
For
Yeah,
what?
for what?
It was something stupid. It was the first year of the graduated license.
Of course, it was something stupid.
Well, like you
But
couldn't
you
be
really
out.
got arrested.
Well, yeah, and we were out riding around after curfew. Had too many people with me. We were on the governor's property. Who knew that was the governor's property? I didn't know. So, anyways, moving on.
Wow,
Tisk, tisk.
you've come a long way, my friend.
You too, Pastor.
Pot called McCannibal. Okay, let's get into it. Let me give full disclosure here. I learned this. I mentioned this before, and I'll say it again. This teaching over the next 4 weeks, and I think, Robert, we will take this teaching to the end of our season. This will take us to the end of the season, and it's worth hanging on for, because this right here, Andrew, I've alluded to it, was what got me on the journey 20 years ago. 2004, believe it or not. It was the summer of 2004.
Yeah.
Let me tell you where I was. I was at the Chuck Wagon. Candy and I had just met in March.
Okay.
March 15th.
I had just graduated high school.
Yeah. Gosh. Candy and I had just met March 15th, and we had met on a blind preaching date, right? Whatever that is.
Whatever. You've
Yeah.
said that.
I don't know what that means.
What
Yeah,
is
I was preaching, and it was
Well,
a
no, it
blind
was
date.
like a
It
blind
was a
date.
blind date. Somebody invited us to. We never met before, and I was preaching.
Okay.
Right? Okay.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we dated distance dating. She was in Baton Rouge. I was in Louisiana, and we dated for about 2.5
Well, we were both in Louisiana, but then you went away for the summer.
Yeah, she's in Baton Rouge. I was in New Orleans.
New Orleans,
sorry.
yeah.
And I went away for the summer with Tim LaFleur, and I was going to be the camp pastor. So we dated for 2.5 months, and then I was away for about 2.5, 3 months. And I was with Tim as the camp pastor of Glorieta, this camp back in the day in New Mexico. And there was a guy his name was,
forget his name.
Jim. His name was Jim. Jim was the leader of the Chuck Wagon. You ever been to Glorieta before?
I have
Anybody
not.
been to Glorieta in here? Okay. The Chuck Wagon was this place where you could buy hamburgers and snacks and stuff.
Yeah.
And I was the camp pastor of the whole camp. It was about 150-something kids or college students.
Yeah.
And then I would lead them every week and, preaching and stuff. But so I'd hang around with the kids all through the week. And I'm hanging in there one day, and Jim was a missionary from Romania. And then Jim was just wild and crazy. Everybody loved Jim. And you would walk into the Chuck Wagon when a lot of people were there, and Jim would be regularly hanging from the rafters, and he would yell to the college student, "Pike me, Luke, pike me," which meant push me.
Yeah.
And like literally this odd side of this 30-something-year-old man swinging from the rafters. Jim got fired a few years later, I heard. But anyway, Jim was a good guy.
Did he really?
I think he did, yeah. But there was other things going on. But and Jim was a good dude. But Jim pulls me aside one day. Now, you got to remember, context. 2004, I'm only a Christian for a year and a half.
I really hope Jim doesn't listen to this podcast now.
Yeah, no. Yeah.
we love
I
Jim.
said I love Jim.
Okay.
I didn't fire Jim, by the way. But I don't even know if he got fired. I think the whole thing imploded. But so Jim pulls me aside one day and says this line. You talk about an offhand conversation that changes the course of my life, my short, early Christian life. He said, "Do you know the 3 messianic miracles that Jesus did to prove he was the Messiah?" Now I ask you if you're listening. Do you know the 3? I'd even say there are 4 if you put the resurrection in there. But do you know the 3 messianic miracles? And I said, I don't even know what you're talking about. He said, a lot of people like to claim that Jesus never said he was God. but he didn't say he was God like an American Western preacher.
Right.
He said it like a Middle Eastern Jewish rabbi would.
Yeah.
By not just saying it, but by doing it.
Right.
See, the Jewish people are always about doing. Your doing proved your believing. If you didn't do, you don't believe. That's the whole argument of James, right? And so think about this, Acts chapter 1 and 2, after they heard the message of Peter. They didn't finish the sermon and say, what must we believe to be saved? Now, that's a whole nother conundrum. I'm not saying you have to do anything to be saved,
Right.
but their mindset is, if I believe a certain way, I'm going to act a certain way, which is
sure.
why I tell people, you don't have to tell me. I tell people at church sometimes, you don't have to, is my son saved? Is my daughter saved? Well, they said a prayer 20 years ago.
Right.
And I say, you don't have to tell me what you believe. Just let me watch what you do, and I'll tell you what you believe by the way you live.
Yeah. I mean, you wrote a book named This Bearing Fruit.
True.
Like, so is this tree dead or alive? Is it bearing fruit?
Absolutely.
You know, I can't judge your life, but I can see the fruit that you bear.
Yeah. And the line
Well,
I came up,
I was going to say, even Jesus says, I believe in the gospel somewhere, don't believe just by what I say, but what I do.
Yeah.
What verse is that? There's a verse on that.
Second opinions.
No, I'm telling you, it's a real verse. Robert will find it.
First hesitations.
It's something about
No.
don't only believe by what you've heard me, what I say, but
Yeah, by my
the
actions.
actions
Yeah,
that
yeah,
I do.
yeah.
And even in the Old Testament, if you want to go way back, I mean, even God, every time he remembered something, it was action.
That's good.
Every
Yeah,
time.
the line I've come up with, and I wrote it in Bearing Fruit, is the fruit of one's life, or the lack thereof, reveals the root of
Right.
your heart. Meaning, I can't tell the root of the seedbed of your heart. I can't tell the genuineness of your conversion, but I could watch the way you live. Right. Okay, so he says to me, 3 messianic miracles. Jesus did 3 purposeful miracles, just like John has a treasure map. In a sense, it's hard to think this, but just like John had a treasure map, or a map to say, all right, I'm going to set up shop at these 3 not random locations, but I'm going to do it to prove a point. It's almost like Jesus is getting downloaded information from the Father in quiet when he wakes up early, and the Father's charting out his life. Everything Jesus did was intentional, nothing by accident. Nothing. When Jesus goes to a well in Samaria on that day at noon to meet someone, he's not there by accident. He knew the woman was there because he planned her to be there, which is a whole other discussion. So Jesus is doing these things meticulously. Okay, now let's back up. When I started studying the Messianic miracles, which there are 3, and we'll get to them over the next few weeks, and you want to hang on for this. This is actually, if I would say, why did you do the whole podcast? It'd probably be for these next few episodes,
Okay.
although there's 10,000 other things we're going to learn, but this started it, okay? Before.
Robert found it. John 10:38.
Here we go. Look at her.
But if I am doing them and you don't believe me, believe the works. This way you will know and understand that the Father is in me and I in the Father.
In him. Yep, that's good. Candy. Ding, ding, ding. Give her, somebody give her an ice cream sandwich,
There we
please,
go.
after the show. Okay. No, that's good, babe. Okay, you're right. So here's the point. When I start studying this, I realize before Jesus gets to his ministry, before John starts to do anything, there was a protocol in the Jewish community, a book, if you will. I'm trying to think of the right word. An evaluation book, let's say, a book to evaluate the genuineness and the viability and the truthfulness of a movement. You have to remember this. Let's put ourselves in the context of Jesus. Guess how many rabbis, and I found 3 more in my study of Revelation. Guess how many rabbis, or guess how many people, back up, claimed to be the Messiah. This is crazy. Within 100 years before Jesus is coming and 100 years after. So within 200 years, 100 before, 100 after, how many people in the Jewish nation rose up and claimed to be rabbi?
Too many.
27.
Too many's a lot. 1 would be enough, because you got to remember the claim of the claim of Messiah is saying this: I'm the chosen one of God. I'm going to bring and usher peace for Israel and decimation for the enemy. And I'm the guy. I'm the chosen one of God. Okay, we have them in our day and age. Jim Jones and the Hellbop comic, Applewhite guys. I mean, those kind of David Koresh. These are modern day people. But back then, guess how many claimed and had a legitimate following?
32.
12. 12, a dozen basically.
Yeah.
Okay. You may know some of them. Judas the Galilean. There was one in Jesus' day. I mean, right after Jesus. Another one is Thaddeus. Gamaliel in Acts chapter 5 says that. He said, or Judas the Galilean. I think he quotes Judas the Galilean, Acts chapter 5. Remember when they're saying, what are we going to do with these two guys, John and Peter? We're going to destroy them. And Gamaliel, or Gamaliel, whatever you say, Gamaliel is probably the better way to say it. He gets up and he says, listen, if this is not of God, it will what?
Fade out.
It's going to fade out. But if it is of God, it's going to what? You can't what?
You can't stop it.
You can't stop it. Now, if you go read that passage, what he mentions is just like in the days of Judas the Galilean, verse 37, Acts chapter 5. But before that, he says in verse 36, some even had followed the false Messiah, Theudas, who rose up claiming to be somebody. A group of 400 people got behind him, but he was killed too. So just in Acts chapter 5, you have two guys that are mentioned. Okay, here's the point. The nation of Israel had to put together an evaluation form. That's what I'm looking for. An evaluation sheet to determine.
Survey?
Like a survey, but more of a, it's not the technical, somebody help me with it. It's the word that you're using this to determine the veracity, the truthfulness of something, and you're checking the boxes to say, you know what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
Okay.
I got you.
I
think evaluation's a good word.
Like a polygraph.
Yeah. Like a hand held polygraph in your mind based on two things. Okay, so here's how the polygraph investigation technique worked. There were two phases to this process, and I'm going to show these to you in the Bible, in the ministry of John and then Jesus. The first phase is called the observation phase. Okay, the observation phase basically is because you got to remember in that time period, the whole nation was a hotbed for insurrectionists. You know, they were ready to storm the gates and attack their enemies. So people were rising up all the time. In fact, there was a whole group that decided they're going to name themselves Zealots.
Oh, yeah.
Because they were zealous after Phineas, attacked in the oath. That's how they got the idea, zealots, from Phineas. But they wanted to attack. So you got a whole bunch of people doing this. So the religious leaders said, we got to determine what's real and what's not. A lot of them are not, but let's put together. So it was an observation phase. Here's how it worked. Whenever there was word that there was a potential Messiah on the scene, the Jewish religious leaders would send delegations of people consisting of different leadership. Okay, so you got to remember you had 5 different groups or sects back then, SECTS, that would talk about, that were around. Now, by the way, just disclaimer, I got this from a guy named Arnold Frichtenbaum. I needed to give this disclaimer. Arnold Frichtenbaum is who Jim Tomey taught him this. Mm-hmm. Really neat name, Arnold Frichtenbaum, graduate of DTS Seminary, a Jewish Hebraic scholar. I recommend his stuff to you. I don't agree with everything, but I agree with most things he says, and he's been really, Dwight Pryor, Arnold Frichtenbaum, probably the two rabbis that have taught me the most. I've read everything Frichtenbaum has written, everything, the commentaries, everything. Not the newer commentaries, but most everything he's written. I've read his commentary, 4-book commentary, Yeshua on the Gospels, 4 times. Oh, wow. So I love this guy. I love his stuff. Okay. He says the first stage is observation. Here's how it works, Andrew. The 4 different groups, Sadducees, Pharisees, Essenes, Zealots, and Herodians. Herodians are out because they're connected in bed with the government. But the others would send delegation leaders in order to observe the movement. And I'm going to show you in John his life, the first one. Luke chapter 3, verse 7. You're going to see this right out the gate in John's ministry. John comes on the scene, and John is causing a ruckus by the Jordan River. And so in the observation stage, here's what they do. There's a couple rules, okay? Rule number 1, they could not ask a question or raise an objection to the person. They had to simply observe, take notes, mental notes.
So kind of like a PI.
Yeah, undercover PI. They're just in the crowd. They're gathering facts. They're determining the legitimacy of something.
They're trying to catch him in something.
Yes, and then they would report back in their preliminary witness to the Sanhedrin, which was the governing body of Israel. So you have the Sanhedrin, another group I didn't talk about. Sanhedrin would be like the Supreme Court. Okay, so you have the Supreme Court sending out delegates to gather information and come back. Luke chapter 3. verse 7. Okay.
He then said to the crowds who came out to be baptized by him, brood of vipers, who warned you to flee from the coming wrath.
Okay. John's pretty sharp because John recognizes what's happening. John knows the protocol. Remember, John's a priest by birth, so he knows the protocol. So he sees the crowds. What does it say, Luke chapter 3? Or what does it say?
He said he then said to
the crowds
who came out to be baptized by him, brood of vipers, who warned you to flee from the coming wrath.
Okay, this is, if you have a Bible, you can mark in here, this is the beginning of the investigation.
You know what he says right after that?
Okay, say it.
Therefore, produce fruit consistent with repentance, you Pharisees and Sadducees.
Okay, John ain't
Basically
playing.
what he's saying.
John ain't playing.
Meaning
Okay.
they don't repent.
They don't repent. Okay. Yeah, exactly. The second phase, which is moved into quickly, is the interrogation phase.
So are they investigating John at this point?
Yes, yes. Because watch this.
So even though John is not claiming to be a Messiah, he has a following, he has a ministry, so they're like, hey,
yeah,
we
that's
need
what's
to...
cool
is
about
this guy?
John.
Yeah.
John never says one time, "I'm the guy." In fact, he says over and over, he's not the guy when he's asked. But
Yeah.
that's the interrogation stage. Watch this.
Right.
So John's just doing his thing. He knows Malachi. He's the forerunner. He's dressing up in costumes. He's preaching at certain spots. It doesn't take long before people say, "Hey, this guy thinks he's the Messiah."
Yeah.
We got another one on our hands. You know, let's send a delegate. That's what they would say. Bringing back the troops.
Well, that's because they were all jealous. And so because he's drawing a crowd, you know,
Yeah.
they think they can control everything and they can take these people out based on these investigations and interrogations, but
Yeah.
they're in for a rude awakening.
Yeah, see, that's what's so fascinating and surprising about the gospel messages when you start to really drill down like we're drilling down, is that these folks, the response they should have had should have been jubilation, jubilee and time of celebration and exaltation and man, thank God he finally sent the Messiah. We've been waiting our whole life for this thing.
Yeah.
But like Candy said, it was just the opposite. Why? Because they knew if a new sheriff came to town, their power and their wealth was going to be affected greatly or maybe removed completely.
Yeah. Could it also have been maybe that there had been 12 people or so that had claimed to be the Messiah that they're waiting for, and they're just jaded and critical because they want to be sure?
Of course. Yeah, of course they are. Yeah, in their humanity. Of course. We would be too. I mean, how many guys get on television and say, "I'm a healer. I can heal you of any," which my thing, and I believe in the healings of God, and I've seen people healed, obviously. But those
But
so-called...
for $9.99 a month,
Right.
or
Peter Popoff.
or miracle spring water sent to your
Yeah.
door for just a couple drops in your, which I offered. I sent off for that. But anyway, that's a whole nother story. But the point is, if you're a true healer,
You
like
prank
you
called
have,
me about that.
yeah, we're not going to get in that. We don't have time. But that is a cool prank call. I did where we got just married.
not
Freaked her out
cool
big
at
time.
all.
But anyway, but here's what's interesting. If you're a true healer, then why are you in the church asking for money and not in a hospital healing sick people?
Right.
Like if you truly have the gift of healing. And I'm not here to criticize the healer, but the point is, you'd be skeptical, like we are. This guy's, I don't know about this. I've seen, So you're right, they are. But the interrogation stage would determine if it's legitimate. Here's what happened in that stage. They would go back and report to the Sanhedrin, and according to Fruchtenbaum, and then the delegation was allowed to come back and interview the person making the claims, the bystanders who were there, members of the movement, ask them individual questions, or simply call them out in public and say, "Hey, if you're really this, then you have to give us some more proof," right? They could raise objections. They could ask questions biblically. They could even question the character of the, quote, so-called messianic figure. And then after this stage, the delegation would then go back to the Sanhedrin. They would make a decision based on the movement, and then they would either affirm or condemn the movement. Now, put that in the back of your head, and that's going to change the way you view the Gospels. This is going to change everything for you. At least it did for me. Okay, so the first stage we see in Luke chapter 3, verse 7. The crowds are there, and John knows why they're there. He's like, "Who warned you?" But here's what he's saying: "Who told you to come out and look at the movement?" Because apparently you're here for the movement.
Yeah.
But you brood of vipers realize you're in trouble too. Not just, not to them, you're in trouble too. And then we get to, you ready for this? John chapter 1. Candy, here it is. This is the big shift to the interrogation stage where they start to interrogate
John?
The Baptist himself, yes.
What verse?
In fact, in John, we're told 3 times, you ready for this? 3 times that the crowd was sent to question. We see 3 times they're questioning John multiple times about the movement. Okay, so here's
verse 19.
Here's the verse. John chapter 1, verse 19. Right out the gate, they're going to ask him this question, Andrew. It's going to make sense. Now watch who's here.
Okay. This was John's testimony when the Jews from Jerusalem sent priests and Levites to ask
Stop
him.
this. It's crazy. It's kind of like hidden in plain sight now. You see, now you got another lens on your New Testament Hebraic goggles, okay? So now it's here. You're like, wow, I've seen this my whole life. Didn't know. We see it plainly. The Jews from Jerusalem, Sanhedrin, reference to the leadership, sent, write down, priests and what? Levites.
To ask him, who are you?
Ooh. Now, let me just give you one more thing. When John says, who warned you to flee, what he's saying is, who told you to come here? Why are you here? Like, what are you really here for? Are you really here? What he's saying is, you brood of, why are you here? Are you here because you genuinely are seeking the Messiah? Or are you here, like Candy said, to disprove me so you could keep your wealth and power?
Wow.
Who warned you? Who told you to come here? Okay, keep going. They asked him, who are you?
Yep. He didn't deny it, but
They didn't mince words.
Yeah.
Okay.
Who are you? He didn't deny it, but confessed, I am not the
Who?
Messiah.
John right out the gates, like, hey guys, you got the wrong guy here.
Yeah.
I'm not the Messiah. So then they asked him further questions. Watch this.
What then? They asked him, are you Elijah?
Now that's a good question. Why?
Because he looks like him.
Yeah, and he's going the same places he went.
If you show up at a costume party at my house and you're dressed with
Yeah.
camel's hair, Andrew, and a leather belt and sandals and
a jar of honey.
and a jar
Yeah,
of dried honey with freeze-dried locusts, I'm going to go ahead and say that's
cicadas these days. You know?
Listen,
Cicadas,
I'm ready for those cicadas to get out of
Hey,
here.
somebody needs to figure out how to eat those things because
Yeah.
they're everywhere.
They are everywhere.
Golly. Okay,
All on my
everywhere.
windshield.
Okay, so are you Elijah? First question.
Okay. And then he says,
Nope, not Elijah.
I am not, he said. Are you the prophet?
Yeah,
No,
they
he answered.
they're pulling for straws here.
Right.
Not a prophet.
The
Are
prophet.
you the prophet?
Now, why is the prophet important? Because in Deuteronomy 18:15, Andrew, look that up real quick. Deuteronomy 18:15. I'll give you another Easter egg while we're here and we're done with this because I think we get the point. But this is a cool little Easter egg here.
Are they trying to trick him?
What do you think?
Well, yeah, because he's already said, I'm not the Messiah.
Well, I think they're there assuming he was going to say he was the Messiah, and he just flips it on them.
Because isn't the prophet same as the Messiah?
Yes. No,
instead of
it's a
So they're
code
like,
word. Yes.
he's already
it's-
said, I'm not. And then they're like, well, are you the prophet?
Yes.
They actually think he's going to say, yeah?
Yeah.
Well, they don't know. They're trying to press. These guys aren't very bright. Not the sharpest tools in the shed. All right, Andrew,
Well,
go ahead and read Deuteronomy 18:15. This is a promise to Moses, promise to the people about the future. Now watch
Okay.
this.
The Lord your God will raise up for you a prophet like me from among your own brothers. You must listen to him.
Ooh. Okay, what is he saying? He will raise up what?
A prophet?
A
The
prophet like me. A prophet like me from among your brothers.
Yes. They raise a prophet like me from among your brothers. What did they take that to mean when they said, raise up a prophet like me? Moses for them, remember, was the what?
The Messiah.
Messiah, Savior for them.
Yeah.
He was the Messiah to save them. So what he's saying is, I'm going to raise up one like you. So they took that back then as a code word for the future Messiah. Now watch this. Go to John chapter 6, and I want to show you what the crowd says. Remember, this is a code word for the Messiah. So now we see it first in John chapter 1, but we're also going to see it in John chapter 6. Okay?
What verse?
And we're going to go to John chapter 6, verses 1 through 14. What is this about, Candy?
The fourth sign, feeding of the 5,000.
Feeding 5,000. And after it was over, look at verse 14. 6:14, Andrew.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Hold on, no,
Okay.
Candy's got it. Candy's got it.
Okay,
Watch
he's
this.
got it. Okay.
We're almost done. Watch this.
When the people saw the sign he had done.
What sign? Feeding the
The
5,000,
5,000.
which is a sign, watch this, because we know our Old Testament, just like Moses called down bread
Right.
from heaven, manna from heaven, and fed the people miraculously. Jesus, again, he's got his treasure, he's got his book. In a
Right.
sense,
Oh, yeah.
this is a joke, but he's got a book. God's given him an itinerary that he has to follow, in a sense, to prove things.
Right.
Right.
And he's not going, it just happened to be teaching to feed on accident. He's not saying, I think we'll eat here. No, he planned it.
Yeah.
Because he's trying to prove he's like the new Moses. Now watch this. After the people see the sign of the feeding of the 5,000, watch this.
They said, "This truly is the prophet who is to come into the world."
What prophet?
The prophet.
The prophet. What are they saying? This guy's got to be the Messiah. Got to be. So when people push back and say, no, nobody knew Jesus was the Messiah. There's no way that these people were no, people did know he was the Messiah, and Jesus even affirmed it over and over and over.
Right.
He just didn't come out to say it. Now,
The way that we would say it today.
yes.
So
yes.
he said it. He came out and said it the way they would have said it.
That's true.
But just not the way we, in our culture.
And do you think that that also has something to do with just his humility and the example that he has set for us too? You know what I'm saying? Like he said it in the Jewish way so that people did
Yeah.
know. But, you know, he wasn't going around and tooting his own horn, so to speak. You know what I mean? Like, I'm the Messiah. Come to me. I'm the one. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Even though he
also
had
knew it was
every
leading
right.
to his death. You know what
Right.
I'm saying?
He had every right to do that.
Yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying? So it just makes me think about like how we act today.
Yeah.
And what kind of things or accolades or are we saying like about ourselves or our ministries or that sort of thing?
Yeah.
I don't know. It just makes me think like he is the epitome of humility in every way.
Yeah. And a good model to follow.
Yeah, and I mean that's something I struggle with, you know, and
Yeah, we
that
all
sort of
struggle.
thing. And so it's just like, you know, he could have just come out and said, "I am the Messiah. Come to me," right? But I don't know. It
And
just
he would have
makes
been
me
right in
think,
doing so.
Yeah.
I
But
think
he
I
just-
think a part of it obviously is the humility of Jesus. Remember, it's always they always say, "Let someone else promote you and not you," which is always a good rule of thumb for life. But I think it's more than that. I think Jesus knows, obviously, because he knows the heart of man. He could discern what they were thinking. Jesus knows the reason he's not saying who he is. In fact, let's make a note. I'll answer this question next week, and then we'll get into your homework is to go through John 1 and find the other two times they're going to question him. And I'll give you a hint. At the end of this little section, verse 22, they say, the next thing they say is, well, who are you then? Because we need to give an answer to those who sent us. I mean, you can't make this up. I mean, you'd almost think we are making it up. Well, we're not making it up. It's in the text.
It says it
so,
right there.
So your point is to look through. But next week we're going to talk about why does Jesus tell some people, go back and tell everyone what I did? And then he tells other people, don't tell anybody. You ever wondered that before?
Oh, yeah,
Let's
for
pick
sure.
that up, Robert, first thing next week. And then we will continue on our journey through the 3 messianic miracles you're not going to want to miss.
All right, let's go. Well, I'm excited about that. The way you close that down reminded me of like a talk show, like growing up. I don't know. Next week, don't forget to join us. for
Deja
this.
vu.
Exactly. All right. Well, deja vu. What is that?
That means you remembered it from, I thought you said it brought you back.
Oh yeah,
to
you're right.
remember.
Sorry, anyways, moving on. Well, hey,
Here we
so
go.
glad you joined us on this episode. If you enjoyed it, share it with a friend. Leave us a review.
We need a review.
We need a.
We try to hit 400.
You can leave us a review. We don't need your review. We just love hearing from you.
Any reviews possible.
We would love
That's
one.
right.
No, Andrew doesn't like any reviews.
No, I like reviews. I like
You
reviews.
want 5-star reviews?
5-star only, though, is all I'm asking for.
Review and subscribe.
That's right. Anyways, and connect with us on Instagram at The Forgotten Jesus. We'd love to connect with you there. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you on the next episode.